everyone to today's session. Are we ready? Are we ready for today's session? I said last week, today we are last week I said that we are going to go into a bit more practical implementation today. So today is going to be there's going to be a bit of teaching, yeah, but we are going to be doing some exercises. So we've laid some foundation last week. So before we proceed, I always like to do this, especially if I have multiple sessions. I would like us all to go into the chat and drop one thing you remember from last week, one thing you took away from last week that you still remember today, of all the things that were said. One thing you remember. And please, I beg you, don't tell me the session was great. It was mind-blowing. Those are all right. So I'm seeing some responses here. Growth is about changing form and shape. And growth is not the end result, but in the process. Peace. If we are awarding points, I will give you some very good points for that, because that was one very critical pillar of everything we said last time. It's about changing shape. Last week we mentioned that growth is about changing shape or form, which results then in changing outcomes. So thank you for that. Abigail said she learned how to change her shape. I want to ask a follow-up question. How do you change your shape? All right. How do you change your shape from what we said last week? And we're going to get into that more practically today. But thank you for that feedback, Abigail. Sylvester says growth is a process and not just an outcome. So true, so true. So I see a lot of us, that shape principle or paradigm stuck with us. And I'm very glad for that, because it's at the center of a lot of what we're going to be doing. All right. Sunny says create before you consume. Thank you for picking that. Thank you for picking that up. We must be intentional. Godwin says, Warmiya says, I learned that the journey of growth requires transformation in form and in shape. Yes. Okay. So I see a lot of responses. The process of improvements and growth we go through is also a result of growth, and not only the milestones we get to achieve. Very well noted, Mercy. And Mr. Nick, Mr. Nick has given us a summary.
No,
All
that's
right, one
not
of the
me.
things
That's
Mercy
not
does.
me. That's from the group.
Okay, that's your AI.
No, it's not AI. Like someone posted it on the WhatsApp group. So
Oh,
I copied it and pasted.
okay, beautiful. Let me read that. Thank you. One of the things that stood out for me was when he said, create before you consume. That is, create something before you go on social media, and also the shape, the stories I tell myself, my habits, assumption. Beautiful. My identity is rooted in being a child of God. My roles in life may vary. Today I'm a student, always a daughter, and tomorrow perhaps something entirely new. Beautiful. I like that feedback. Thank you so much. Talking about create before we consume. I was earlier today speaking, no, not today, earlier this week actually. I was interfacing with some members of my community, a tribe I run for, um, helping facilitate results and outcomes for people who are intentional about their goals. And one of the things we're doing currently is a 28-day productivity challenge. And I shared that idea with some of them also. And one of them who said her goal for the next 90 days is to be more consistent in her content creation for her brand. She said that part of the thing she identified that had always told her wasn't because she didn't have time to structure and create her content. It was because she was spending most of the time consuming. Do you get? If she spends 7 hours a day on the internet, 6 hours, 30 minutes is spent just mindlessly binging on other people's. And she keeps telling herself, oh, I need to make time to create content. And she said the moment she heard that from me, she just took that. As of today, she was giving a feedback. She had created content. And I'm like, yeah, that's good. You know, so we're talking about paradigms. There are agreements we make with ourselves and intentions we set for ourselves that make it easier for us to remember what we are trying to achieve or accomplish. And that's why this is so beautiful. So, okay, for the sake of time, I won't be able to read out all of the feedback I'm getting from you guys. All right, so we're going to go into today's session. Let me try and share my slide. We're going to do a bit of a recap. So I see a lot of you guys picked on the shape. So I'm very happy with that because it's going to make it easy for me to pick up from there. When I was coming into that, I was hoping that, oh, please let it be that this guy didn't forget this thing because that will make my job much more difficult. All right. But I see most of us did remember. So let me click on present and we're going to start from that. Right. So we'll start from this shape to shape your outcomes. We broke down this paradigm, this framework to make it easier for us to understand that at the base of the outcomes that we get in life are the stories that we tell ourselves, right? The beliefs that we hold so close to our hearts concerning our identity, our capacity, our possibilities. And that if I must change my outcomes, I must first go to the roots and change those beliefs, right? And so building on that, there's something we're going to do today. I'm going to start with something today. But here's an overview of what we're going to try and cover today in this 1 hour. For the sake of our time, there are some things I've compressed and I just went straight to the points for the sake of our time, but I'll do my best in this session to help us understand all of that. But this is the summary of everything we're going to do today. We've built the foundation. Today, we're going to see how to rewire our mindsets for growth, how to begin to change our stories, because it's easy to say change your shape, but how exactly do you begin to change your shape, to rewire the stories you tell yourself, to rewire your mind? Is a mindset reset, as it were. It's a restructuring of the stories. It's a changing of pictures. It's a changing of pictures. And so that's why we'll wrap up today's session with empowerment anchors. When we get there, we'll talk about things like affirmations, the power of affirmations, and why and how to do them properly. We'll talk about things like the vision board. Of course, for the sake of time, I won't go into the elaborate process of vision board, but just to lay foundation on it. I do vision board sessions that run for 2 hours, just laying foundation for vision board. It's obviously I can't do all of that today, but everything is going to start from changing of pictures, and then we can then, if we get this part right, the rewiring for growth, it becomes easier to understand why vision board, how vision board, why affirmations, how affirmations, and all of that. All right, so who's with me? Are we ready to go on this journey? I'm going to start with part of what I consider to be foundational in helping us change our shape, in helping us retell our stories, is in x-raying our mindset. And this is still in the S category or quadrant of the shape, the stories we tell ourselves. The stories we tell ourselves encompass the beliefs that we hold about ourselves. They encompass the foundational ideas and perceptions that drive how we agree with the world, agree with situations, agree with opportunities, as it were. We gave an example last week that if, was it here I gave that example, that if two of us, if Nick and I, let me give us an example. If Nick and I were to go into an event in person, and there are loads of people in that event, the Dangotes and the Elon Musks and the John C. Maxwell's, and think of any, whoever you consider to be very, very iconic, right? We'll go into that meeting. And if Nick goes into that meeting excited at the opportunity to meet these people, to learn from them, to collaborate with them, right? If Nick believes that he should be in that room, that room provides opportunity for him, the chances are that in preparing to go into that place, Nick is going to be asking himself questions that would open his mind to opportunities. Right. So I'm going for this event. One of the things I teach people when I talk about being intentional about networking, if you're going for conferences, one thing that people miss out for when they go for conferences, they're just going to learn. One of the most important things you get in conferences, live conferences, and even virtual communities like this is strategic networking. And one of the things I teach people when I talk about that is, as you're planning for the things you're going to learn, prepare and plan for the kind of people you're going to meet and how to engage them. So if Nick and I were to go into that event, and because Nick is excited to go there, he believes he belongs there. He believes he can interface with these people. Nick will be thinking, if I were to meet Elon Musk and have a conversation with him for 5 minutes, what would I want to get out of that conversation? The story Nick is telling himself is that I am worthy to step into that room and interface with Elon Musk. That is the thing that is giving him the confidence to even think about how he would engage Elon Musk. Does that make sense? If I, on the other hand, I'm going there and I'm like, hey, God, my village people, they will embarrass me like this. What am I going to say? If I meet this person, I'll get cold feet. The stories I'm telling myself is that I'm unworthy to be in the same space as this person. So it doesn't even give me the room to think of the opportunities that can come out of that. Does that make sense? So until we begin to rewire that, until we begin to change pictures, until we begin to reshape the stories we are telling ourselves, it will be difficult for us to step into the outcomes. I don't know if last week I talked about cognitive dissonance, where if I am saying this is the result I want to get, but the stories that are foundational in my heart are opposed to that result, I am sabotaging the results already. All right. And a lot of this is anchored on our mindsets. So today we're going to be exploring fixed mindsets versus growth mindsets because it's very integral in helping us change our pictures. I highlighted 5 critical areas that our mindsets and the stories of our mind show themselves. Number 1 is in challenge. For someone with a fixed mindset, with a defeated story about themselves, they avoid challenges because the stories they are telling themselves is that they can't overcome this challenge, is that they don't have the capacity to tackle this challenge, is that there is no possibility on the other side of the challenge. Because a fixed mindset operates with the foundational notion that there is nothing that can come out, nothing good that can come out of this, right? That the outcome of this is fixed, the result of this is fixed, so there's no point making any efforts, right? So if a fixed mindset encounters a challenge that seems to be too big for him, instead of the fixed mindset asking, what are the possibilities that can come out of this? The fixed mindset is saying, how can I run away from this? In positive psychology, there are three things that we are taught to explore when you encounter a challenge or an unforeseen circumstance or what seems like an adverse situation. Ask yourself, what's the gift in this moment? Ask yourself, what's the opportunity in this moment? Ask yourself, what's the growth or learning path from this moment? The gift in this moment is that even though this may seem like the worst catastrophe that has happened, everything that happens to you happens for you. And I know that in the moment, it doesn't always seem like it. It doesn't always seem like it. I don't know how many of us have heard about the stallion story. It's a story often used to teach how to approach some of these situations. The stallion story is a story of a Japanese man who had a son, right? And at a time of war, the emperor sent out soldiers to go and recruit all the able-bodied young men, right, in the region to go and fight for them. Now, before these people arrive, the man had a very healthy stallion horse. And so the son took the horse out on a ride. And on that ride, the stallion or the horse unintentionally breaks the boy's leg. And when they return, the boy returns with a broken foot. And in those days, going to war for your nation or for your country was seen as an honor. So when the boy returns with a broken leg, his neighbors were asking the father, "Oh, what happened? This your son has broken his leg. What an unfortunate situation it is." And the father says, "Who knows what's good or bad?" So when the soldiers come to recruit, because of the boy's broken leg, they couldn't recruit the boy, and they go and his neighbors were mourning him. The man kept saying, "Who knows what's good or bad?" And then down the line, after the war, the guy whose leg is broken is able to help the father. I've forgotten the details of it, but he's able to help the father with something that turns out to be something that the whole village begins to celebrate. And they begin to say, oh, thank God this your son didn't go to war, because all their sons that went to war died. So thank God this your boy didn't go to war and die. Now he's able to do this for us. And the man keeps saying, who knows what's good or bad. And down the line again, because of that thing that he did, the boy enters into trouble and dies again. And they begin to mourn him again. And the man keeps saying, who knows what's good or bad. And the moral of the story is, why does he keep saying who knows what's good or bad? And if you sit back to think about it, you realize that oftentimes we judge the goodness or badness of a situation based on the punctuation of the story in the current moments that we are. An example I like to give if I go to the Bible is the story of Joseph. It's a story we are so familiar with. The boy who was sold by his brothers, sent to prison. No, went to the palace to work with Potiphar, sent to the prison, then to the palace. And when we read it from scriptures, I mean, you can read that whole story in a day. And because you can read it in an entire day, it feels like one short stretch of story and all. But when you think about it, and put yourself into that story, you realize that there were checkpoints in that story where it could have been easy to define the story one way or the other. If the story of Joseph ended after his brother sold him to slavery, you would say that he was unlucky. But if you went a bit further after that story and met him when he was working with Potiphar, before the wife tempted him, remember that he had so much power in Potiphar's house, you'll be like, this guy, the ball. Your mates are out there suffering, you're here balling in this house. Remember, he was a young man and he had that power in Potiphar's house in a foreign land. If you were to end that story there, you say, this guy, life turned out well for him. Oh. And then move a little bit from there and he's in the prison and you're like, this guy's life is terrible. But move a little further from that story again, and you get to the point where he is now in charge of the most powerful nation in the world at the time. And you're like, man, I'd like to be like this guy. At the end of the day, you look at it and you tell yourself, the situation that I'm passing through or the challenge that I seem to be having now, that I think it's insurmountable, is it the end of the story? Is it really bad? You see, when we approach situations from a growth mindset, we embrace optimism and we see what could be on the other side. And sometimes that could affect your prayer if you're a Christian. Sometimes certain situations that come up, we are praying to God for help. God, help me. Why is my situation like this and all? And God is looking at you and smiling. That's not the prayer you should be praying. Do you not see the opportunity in front of you? Have you ever wondered, if you read the book of Daniel, if you study the book of Daniel, that's one of my favorite books in the Bible. If you study the book of Daniel, have you ever wondered and paid attention to the prayers Daniel prayed in all the different challenges that came? Do you realize that when the king threatened that he was going to kill all the magicians, including Daniel and his friends, if they didn't tell him the dream, him and his friends didn't go and start praying, God, cause this man to die. God, what is all this problem with this man? Do you see the prayer they made? That God should show them, give them the solution. Growth mindset. This is a problem, this is a challenge. But what are you seeing? A fixed mindset avoids challenges because it doesn't see a possibility on the other side. A fixed mindset complains and cries and embraces a victim mindset because the power is only in the hands of other people. The power to change my life is dependent on my boss. The power to change my life is dependent on Nigerian government. The power to change my circumstances and get out of here is dependent on this, on this, on that, never on me. And so because of that, he gives up easily and he sees effort as fruitless. I want how we go do him now, and so we see him now, and so life be like this, right? And why that attracts pity, that's not the kind of mindset you should embrace. That's not the kind of mindset you should embrace. You should embrace the mindset that sees yourself as a solution, that sees yourself as a channel of solution, and sees every situation as something that carries fruits of opportunity. And it may not be comfortable in that moment. Sometimes it may feel hopeless. But if you give yourself the chance to change pictures and rewrite the story, you open the doors of your creativity to be able to see options. Nobody sees options in something you consider to be forgone. Do you understand what I'm saying? You can never see an option when you think that something has been concluded. But if you think it is not concluded, there's something that can still be done about this, then you can begin to consider options. Are we still following? All right. So that brings me to growth mindset. How does it differ from fixed mindset? It embraces challenges. It persists in the face of setbacks. It sees effort as a path to mastery. Right? I may not be good in this yet, but I can
Who
be
is that
good
saying
at it.
navigating?
Someone is unmuted. I may not be good in this yet, but I can get better at it. One of the subtle but critical languages that someone with a growth mindset would use
Okay,
is the
no
word
pressing.
yet. Can we please mute the person who's speaking? All right, thank you. Now, one of the most powerful, subtle words, very, very easily overlooked, but very critical in reshaping our mindsets, is the word yet. I don't know how to do this yet. I've not been able to find the answer to this yet. Why is that subtle? It removes the note of finality from a situation, right? It gives you the opportunity to say and see that even though in the moment I may not have this capacity or this may not be material in this moment, there is a possibility for it to be material. So when you use languages like, I'm not this kind of person, I'm not the kind of person that does this, I can never do this kind of thing, I've never been able to do this kind of thing, or I don't have the capacity to do this, you're creating a limitation around your possibilities. Growth mindset says yet. Yet. In the moment, I can't do this, but there's a possibility for that. In the moment, I am limited in this area, but there's a possibility for that. In the moment, this seems like a challenge, but there's an opportunity in that. In the moment, this seems like a setback, but there's an opportunity, there's a window in that. So why did I decide to start with this?
I'll do the cup work for them. I'm telling you.
Please, can you all mute your mics? Who is speaking?
Let me give us a minute. Okay. Maybe someone should put a message or a call across to her so that she pays attention to her mic. Okay. All right. So one of the reasons why I decided to start with this before we then go into our practical exercise today is simple. Because if we are able to X-ray ourselves in light of these two boxes here, and we're going to take a minute to do this. If we're able to X-ray ourselves in light of this, we can begin to see what affects how we write the stories we write about ourselves. All right. And here's the truth about growth and fixed mindsets. It's not a single pillar that affects or that expresses itself in every area of your life in equal measure. There's a chance that you may have a growth mindset concerning relationship, but have a fixed mindset concerning business. Do you understand? There's a chance that you may have a growth mindset concerning winning a girl's attention, but have a fixed mindset concerning getting that contract. There's a chance that you may have a good mindset concerning business, but have a fixed mindset concerning your fitness. So the idea of this is to use this, look at this, and ask yourself, in what areas of my life am I embracing growth mindset and fixed mindset? In what areas of my life am I telling myself stories that are limiting me, that are holding me back? And in what areas am I giving myself the permission to express the fullness of my life? Now, this brings me to what we are going to do today. We're still going to build on the shape, but we're going to break it down today. And we're going to use this to segue into those anchors that we're going to end with today. So from last week, we did a bit of this exercise. I told you to think about areas where you may be having beliefs that are holding you back, what those could be. So today I want you to think of just one area. Now I want you to think about, for those of us who have maybe monthly goals, quarterly goals, annual goals, whatever they are, or anything that you have chosen as an important objective for the next 1 month or 3 months, just one outcome. Think about what it is. If you have your paper, your jotter, whatever it is, write that down. Let your eyes be seeing it. And once you do that, come to the chat and type done. We're going to go on a series of reflective questions, because my objective for today's session is that at the end of the session, beyond the head knowledge, you can have on paper something that you have done that has helped shift your paradigm, your growth paradigm. So think of one goal that you have as a priority for the next 1 month or 3 months, and go to the chat room and type done for me. It's the chat. Okay. Okay, let me stop sharing so I can see. Okay, I see Dawn from Abigail, Dawn from Peace, Dawn from Chidima. How else? Dawn from Abubakar, Dawn from Gifts. We are 44 on this call. All right, so I'm expecting to see a lot more Dawn from Godwin. Okay, Dawn from Norma, from Mary, from Abba, from Julius, from Dukong, from Arame. Okay, beautiful. So let's get back to our slide. Okay, now that you've chosen an outcome, here's what I would like you to do. Now that you've chosen an outcome, I want you to, as much as you can in the next 1 minute. So for each question I pull up here, you would have a minute to get an answer. Now, the caveat is, or the disclaimer is, this is an exercise to help you on the path. I know that for the sake of time, you will not have all the time to think of all the answers, but whatever comes to your mind first, write it down. And this is an honest assessment. So as honest as you can be with yourself, the better the results that you get from this exercise. So if it's a diary or a jotter that only you see that you're using, that's perfect. And if you're all by yourselves, that's even better. But I want you to be as honest as you can in these exercises. I want you to, in the next 1 minute, ask yourself, what stories are you telling yourself concerning yourself in this area? Whatever that goal is, what beliefs do you have about yourself regarding that goal? Your capacity, your competence, your identity, the kind of person you are in line with that goal or with that objective, how you see the possibility of you being able to achieve that or not, Just be honest and sincere with yourself. What thoughts about yourself come to mind when you think about this goal? That's what I want you to write out for the next 1 minute. So let me set a timer. What stories are you telling yourself in this area? Someone with my kind of accent is not worthy to speak in this kind of platform. Someone with my kind of qualification cannot stand with people in this kind of spaces. What stories are you telling yourself? I've never run a business before. What makes me think I can start this one? I don't know anything about this. What gives me the audacity to try? Right? Our 1 minute is up. Our 1 minute is up. Now, building on that, like I said, it's going to be a series of reflexive questions because I want us to do, to not just speak. We're going to revisit a question we asked last week. Of those stories you're telling yourself, which of them, whether they be beliefs or mindset about you, which of them, those beliefs, have held you back from growing in line with this goal? So we're making it specific this time. Look at those stories you're telling yourself. Which of them is a productive story? Which of them is an empowering story? Which of them is not an empowering story? So for this section, you're thinking of which of them does not help you to grow towards that goal, which of them is holding you back. So look at those things you've written, whatever the stories are. Which of them is holding you back? And since we're at that, at the same time, you can just tackle this one also. Which of them is helping you, giving you the courage, the confidence to grow towards that goal, to attempt that goal, to try that goal, to give yourself a chance, giving you the optimism, the hope that something can be born out of this. That something can be born out of this. I have 30 seconds to reflect on that. 30 seconds. 20 now. Ten seconds more. Okay, we're still building on that. Now that you have sifted the stories, the beliefs, I want you to ask yourself, because of these stories and these beliefs and this mindset I have regarding this, what habits have I subscribed to in line with this goal? Now, before you answer this, I have a follow-up to make it clearer for you. So when talking about habits, we're talking about patterns. If we remember from last week, habits are the patterns that we have built because of the stories we are telling ourselves, right? So look at some of the examples I gave here. Procrastination, negative self-talk, comparison, fear of failure. Sometimes these things become patterns. Sometimes the reason you're procrastinating on something is because at the back of your mind, you feel you're not prepared for it. at the back of your mind, you feel you're not qualified for it or you're not competent enough for it. Somewhere you feel that you're not worthy to be the person that will handle this kind of vision or dream or idea. And sometimes you go into a pattern of negative self-talk. When this kind of opportunity comes up, you go into a pattern of, I'm not good enough for this. I can't speak in this kind of place. I can't relate with this kind of persons. I don't have the kind of money that gives me the permission to relate with this kind of persons and all. And those become patterns. So it becomes a safe space for your excuses to not pursue that goal. So when we're talking about these patterns, now I want you to think, what patterns have you embraced that may be sabotaging you in line with this goal? And be very honest about this. Because of this story I'm telling myself, I noticed that because I believe this about myself or about my capacity, about my opportunities, about whatever it is, where I come from and all, because I believe this, it often makes me to go into this kind of pattern. So for the next 1 minute, I want you to think very deeply about that and write whatever comes to your mind. Be very honest and, straightforward with yourself here, because you're trying to challenge the foundations that can then help you launch into new outcomes. So if you're excusing any sabotaging beliefs or patterns, you would only reinforce them. All right, so think very well about this and write whatever comes to mind. Write whatever comes to mind. For some of us, some of the stories and beliefs you may hold is that if you fail at something, it means that you're a failure. And maybe you've tried businesses in the past or tried to start something in the past once, twice, thrice, and they have failed. And so you've come to then embrace the lie that you are a failure or that you're never good enough to start something big. And that's a story that you're telling yourself. And that could lead you into a pattern of talking yourself down every time a bright idea comes to your head. Talking yourself down every time an opportunity comes your way. Nick, I see your hand is raised.
I just wanted to add, maybe you didn't do well in school. And I think that's one of the major things I noticed.
Exactly.
Yeah, so you try as
Exactly.
much as you can. You couldn't do well in school. You didn't get the grades you want, and then you just decide you just use that certificate to define yourself.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Thank you. That's a very common factor by which we define ourselves. It's part of what I call the performance trap. I wrote a letter to the guys in the Man Academy this week. And in the letter, I wrote that they should be kind to themselves. And one of the things I wrote there was that they should avoid the performance trap, attaching their self-worth and identity to performance. And sometimes that becomes a story that we use to hold ourselves back, right? On the day Nick cannot show up to be the incredible, amazing initiator of great visions and dreams and all, he shouldn't feel like he's no longer worthy as a person. On the day Chimezie, or in the season that Chimezie just needs to catch his breath and recover, when no ideas are coming, no spectacular thing is coming from him. Is he a less Chimezie than he used to be? No, he's not. Right. So sometimes we attach our worth and identity to those performances, and that becomes a story we are telling ourselves. And sometimes it sets us into saboteur patterns where we do a coaching where we talk about the 9 saboteur patterns in positive intelligence, which are, sabotage patterns that people embrace because of experiences from childhood and they run with it for the rest of their life. And one of those sabotage patterns is hyper-rational. We have hyper-rational, we have hyper-vigilant, we have One of the sabotage patterns, what it does is because of failures in the past and people judging you based on your successes and performance, you'll go through life having to prove a point when you don't need to. So you feel like you always have to prove something before you can be worthy. You feel like you always have to perform to be respected. You feel like you always have to bring some exceptional value to the table for people to honor you and respect you fundamentally. And that's a disempowering story we tell ourselves, because what it means is that in the seasons when you need to rest, you feel unworthy and you feel like your life is falling apart when all you need is rest and recovery. Because even the mightiest of heroes need sometimes to be saved themselves. And it doesn't make them any less the person they are. Right. So I'm giving some of these examples so that we realize that some of these things are patterns that have formed over the years and become stories we've embraced about ourselves. All right. And so sometimes we also enter into patterns of trying to please people via actions and commitments because we think that is how we can become worthy also. And again, these are stories that set us into patterns. All right. Now that we are done with this, I want you to then ask yourself, what are the assumptions that you are embracing regarding this goal you've chosen? Now, for clarity, like I established last week, between stories and assumptions. In looking at stories, you're looking at things, beliefs you've embraced about yourself. In looking at assumptions, we are looking at beliefs and assumptions you have about other people and the world at large. So earlier today, I read the short post Nick posted on LinkedIn. Is it earlier today? Just about over an hour ago, when you talked about just that. And sometimes that is a very strong assumption that holds us back. That I have to have everything figured out from beginning to end before I start. And that wrong assumption can impede your growth and your pursuit of a goal. And that's an assumption. Assumptions are deductions we draw and make through from observable facts that may not be true. So the fact that there will be day and night is a fact. But the fact that because night has come, I cannot do anything again is an assumption. I don't know if you understand what I'm trying to say. So I'm not in attempting this. Don't bring facts. I'm not saying what facts are there. I'm saying based on those facts, what assumptions may you be making concerning this? The fact that a business at some point or at some level, or an idea at some point at some level would need finances is granted. But the fact that I would need money to start this business could be an assumption. It could be an assumption holding you back from starting that vision and idea. And because you think the only thing that you need to start the vision is money, could be an assumption. Why these things are important to identify is if you are able to tackle the assumptions you're holding. So just ask yourself honestly, what are the assumptions I'm holding about this goal? What are the assumptions I'm holding about this goal? Whether it be an initiative you want to start, a business you want to start, fitness, as it were. Maybe an assumption you have about fitness is that you have to be, oh, I don't have time in the morning. So what's the point? I can't do workouts. That could be an assumption. People do workouts in the evening. Right. So what are the assumptions you may be holding regarding this outcome? And sometimes some of those assumptions are very comfortable excuses we embrace. We embrace those assumptions and hold them very tight because it gives me a reason to say, this is why I've not started this. That's why I said in this exercise, be very honest. Be very honest. Shake your table. Shake your table is good so that you can build a stronger table. So shake this very weak table, right, of the assumptions that you have so that we can build a stronger table. All right. Now, moving on from that, based on the stories, the patterns, and the assumptions, what possibilities are you currently seeing regarding this goal? If you trace it from the story, because I believe this about myself, it has set me on the path where this is the pattern I've developed. And because of this, I've embraced this assumption. And based on that, this is what I currently see as the possibility in this goal. Maybe, again, using the example I've been using, business idea, maybe because of that, I've told myself that, this business idea I'm thinking of, it will not work. This business will not work. That's what this question is attending to. What is the possibility you're seeing regarding that goal, that vision? This will not work. I gave us example last week. The first time I started conceptualizing the Man Academy, I told myself, someone like me is not worthy to start that kind of thing. Yes, I did. I told myself that someone like me, who you be now? People that someone like you can start this. And that was the possibility that was set before me for years. That's the truth. The funny thing was that the ideas were coming. I was taking down notes. I was fleshing out ideas. But every time it met that roadblock, guy, go and deal with your life first. Take care of yourself first. This kind of thing is not people like you don't. It's people that have gotten to a certain age and experience and expertise that can begin to think about this. And that was a possibility. Nick, I see your hand is raised again.
Yeah, so I have a confession to make though.
Okay,
Before last week class, so there was this project I had in mind and I've been working on. And one of the things that have been preventing me to actually go launch it out was the fact that I'm Black. So so something was telling me that as a Black person, you will not be accepted to do this project. So but I was even trying to say, okay, let me look for one white guy and bring on board and make like the face of the project. I mean, so it can outgrow some of these things sometimes, they spring up from different points. So I said,
Yes.
but after that last week engagement, I said, come on, Nick, what are you doing? Like that's why like you were speaking to me like that last week. So I just
Okay,
concluded
that's
like
good.
because I'm Black, I'm not going to be accepted because yeah.
You see, I like something that you said, Nick. I like something that you said because you see, sometimes when I teach these things, people assume that um this guy is so perfect that these kind of things never come up. And this is why we teach these things. As I teach you these things currently, let me just be very open with you guys. I'm currently running a program under my boss and who is also my mentor, Mr. Teken. I'm sure you know him. Where I'm running a program I did 2 years ago. We call it the Shape Program. It's actually a 12-week structured daily prompt and activity program that helps you constantly challenge your saboteur patterns, your shape, and all of that. I'm currently running that till today. And here's the interesting thing. As much as I did that 2 years ago, did a refresher of it last year, I'm doing it right now, and I'm observing again certain areas of my life where certain saboteur patterns are springing up, certain areas of my life where I'm having certain assumptions that have been holding me back, certain areas of my life where I'm beginning to embrace stories about myself that I'm looking at myself, wait. So this thing has been here all along, right? And that's why these kind of sessions are very important. Because why I approach this session this way, I didn't want to do teach. I could spend 2 hours teaching you about possibilities that you see theoretically. I could. In all fairness, I've done this over and over again. I could spend the next 7 days, 3 hours every day, teaching you on shape, and I will not have finished it. But I want you to reflect and get responses for yourself. And I like the fact that, Nick, I like the fact that you give that example because it touches on the fact that sometimes the way people view us, who find ourselves in positions of teaching and equipping people, it's on the assumption that what this guy is teaching, he has mastered it.
That's true.
When I mean mastered, I mean we've gained some level of mastery, but it's on the assumption that this never comes up. But this is fundamental human nature, that events and circumstances will come, and everything that comes affects the nature and the state of your mind. And you have to be intentional about sieving these things per time. You understand? So, like you said, you had an assumption, someone like a Black person and all of that. And you see, because of that, it could have affected your motivation to, do you understand? But the moment you change pictures, same thing happened to me. I was in a master's program here in Cyprus. That was when I came here. And I joined the Digital Technologies Club at the time. He was an Iranian that was the president. He was my class guy too and all. And he had always held events and programs just for the sake of it and all of that. And so I came, this Nigerian guy, still in my second semester in the master's program or the first semester, this thing. I mean, a few of my lecturers knew me at the time. And I was like, these conferences we are holding, why don't we hold a proper conference in the club and the School of Applied Sciences where we can actually properly teach people, teach them, help them to see the possibilities of what they are doing right now, how it connects, teach them hands-on skills and all of that. When I brought it up, someone told me then, and this guy was one of my close guys, he told me then that these people are not serious for this guy. They just want to do conference for the sake of conference so that they will collect certificate and say they've done conference. He now said something to me. He said, since you consider them, who just apply for conference like to the dean and do conference like they always do and collect certificate. I said, no, I would rather not do a conference than do that. And he was now telling me that most of the people who are in the approval, this thing are CPROIT, white people and all of they don't, if you as a Nigerian go, they won't take you seriously. And to be honest with you, for months, I let go of that idea until something happened again in the department. And I said to myself, what's all this? I'm seeing a lot of undergraduates who are, sometimes they come to class and they're asking questions. I'm like, no. I went back, called my guy, sat down with them and like, Larry, come, sir, come. Guys, let's talk. How about we do this and this and this? They're like, oh, that would be nice, but we'll go get approval. I said, don't worry, leave it to me. I went to one of our lecturers, the person that was teaching us data science, Dr. Kian. I spoke to him and he was the president of head of the club, the staff academic head of the club or whatever they called him then. So I went to him and told him about it. He said that would be nice and all. He didn't mention anything about because you're a Nigerian or Black person may be difficult. So what happened was, just like the story in the Bible of David, when he came, I was asking what will be done to the person that will kill Goliath. And when his brothers were discouraging him, scripture said he turned away from them and asked other people, all these discouragement people, let's turn away from them. Let's hear new stories. And that was what I did. When I went to him, he told me it was a brilliant idea that he's on board with me. He himself rather helped me mobilize two other lecturers, the head of the School of Applied Sciences and a very influential lecturer. We ended up organizing that conference, holding that conference. Now, for context sake, every time they hold conferences in that club and lecturers announce it in the class and all of that, that hall would at most be a fifth full of its capacity. We held that conference, the hall was full. Most of the lecturers in the School of Applied Sciences came, and we organized it with our funds and everything, gave awards to the lecturers that handled sessions for us and all of that. We finished that 2 months down the line, the lecturer called me and said that he's thinking of us planning for a follow-up of this conference we did by himself. By himself. Remember that this was the same thing that the first story that we heard was you as a Nigerian, as a Black person, they no go take you serious. We held the event and the head of the club himself, by himself, was now proposing for us to begin to organize a follow-up because it reflected very well on both the club and the School of Applied Sciences. The stories we tell ourselves shape up the possibilities we see. You understand? We need to change pictures. We need to constantly change pictures. If the picture set before you and the story you're telling yourself is disempowering, move away from it. Change the story and it becomes easy to change the patterns and it becomes easy to see new possibilities. All right. Okay. Now, the last part of this is emotions. What emotions do you associate with this outcome? Oh my God. Time. Okay. So 1 minute, let's do this for 1 minute and I'll breeze through the second section of this for the sake of time. Oh, time flies. Okay. What emotions are you associating with this outcome? And I'm going to show us why these emotions are important in the next slide, and that will transition us into the wrap-up. I'll skip a few things and transition us into the wrap-up because of time. But what emotions are you associating with this outcome? When you think about this outcome, this goal, because of the stories you told yourself, I'm not worthy to tackle this vision. Someone like me doesn't do this. How does that make you feel when you think about this goal? Defeated, discouraged, unworthy, or excited, stoked, anticipating, optimistic? How do you feel when you think about this goal? Based on the stories you've told yourself, the patterns you've embraced, and the possibilities you see, what are the emotions that you associate with this outcome? Okay, time's up. So now, if you've done all 5, I want you to go to the chat and drop done. Go to the chat and drop done, because we're going to then connect this whole thing. So if you've done all, go to the chat and drop done. Let me stop my sharing. Done, done, done. Okay, I'm seeing some response. Dokong says that my table is broken. Shaking his understatement. Okay. All right. Okay. Now, I want us to take a moment. Look through from your S to your H to your A to your P to your E once again. That's a profile of your current outcome regarding that goal. That's a profile of it. Now, before we go into neuroplasticity and rewiring, I want you right now on maybe another side of the sheet, you're seeing what the current profile is and how it's been holding you back. I want you to, on another side of that sheet or on another page, write out what would be the ideal outcome you want regarding that goal. I want to have started the business. I want to have completed writing that book. I want to have, that is write the new outcome, because the current shape profile you've just created gives you what is funding the current outcome. Your inability to start that project is your current outcome. Your fear of going on that journey is your current outcome. Your discouragement to propose to that babe, let me use that example. Yeah, I want to, oh God, for the sake of time, I want to do a shape profile of people who don't have the liver to propose to. Even I had this session with someone once, and he was sure that God had told him that this babe was going to be his wife. But my guy no get liver to propose to. Here's the funny thing: 2 of them are friends in church. And during the session, I was asking him, "So what's the problem?" We dug deep. So there's what we call the 7 why exercise. So why are you afraid? He said this. Oftentimes, the first answer we give is not the root cause. So by the time we dug deep and deep and deep, I realized that at the base of it was that this girl comes from a well-to-do family. She doesn't flaunt that. She's not, but he has come from a, in quotes, poor background. And every time he thinks about asking her out, the first thing that comes to his mind, emotion, I mean, that's why emotions, is the fear that if I ask this girl out and she agrees and I introduce me to her parents may reject me. His fear is not even that the girl is going to reject him. That if he asks her out and she agrees and she now introduces him to her parents, that the parents will reject him. That's what has been holding him for months from asking somebody that God has told him is going to be his wife. And that's the current outcome. You see why emotions are important? Because oftentimes, at the end of the day, what will fund our willingness and our ability to then take action is the prevalent emotion. But that prevalent emotion is funded by the stories and the assumptions that have all filtered to our current states. All right. So now that you're looking at your current outcome and you've written out what your future outcome is, to get to that future outcome, this is an exercise you can do outside of this session because of time. I will need you to, on a page, just like you've done this, write S, H, A, B, E. What stories do you need to begin to tell yourself to be able to get this new outcome that you just wrote? Look at your current stories. How do you need to rewrite it to begin to reflect a story that funds this new outcome. What patterns do you need to begin to embrace? And this is where we're going to be talking about the power and the empowerment patterns and all we're going to do today. What new patterns do you need to begin to embrace? What new assumptions do you need to begin to subscribe to get you to that outcome? And what new possibilities do you need to begin to see that proposal, when you send it, it can get accepted? That collaboration you need, when you reach out, you will find someone out there who will be willing to collaborate. Those are possibilities that can fund a new outcome. So this is something you do after. Write out the shape profile of this new outcome you want. That would give you a roadmap of what you need to begin to rewire. Does that make sense? So that brings me to our rewiring. And for the sake of time, I'm going to breeze through a few things just to save time because this is already past 11. All right. And the reason I brought this at this point of the training is by the time we see our current profile, especially the H aspect of it, the habits and patterns, are reflective of hardwired patterns in our neurological framework of life, in our paradigms of life, that we automatically do because they have become set in our minds. And neuroplasticity is simply, without getting into all the details of its scientific and what is it called, neurological details of it, neuroplasticity is simply the concept and the idea that your brain can form new pathways if you allow it. Your brain can form new pathways if you. Now, the way the brain works, the neural pathways works, the way when we think or feel and do something, it creates a neural pathway, a sort of a neural memory in our brain system, the endocrine system, the nervous system, that with continual use of that pathway becomes hardwired and set. So if every time what example can I give? Everyday examples. If every time I wake up in the morning, the first thing I do is to go and take a glass of water and drink. I do it today, do it tomorrow, do it 1 week, 1 month, and all. That pathway becomes so hardwired that my brain doesn't need to think too much again to do it. It becomes like a cue thing. My waking up already cues my body into going to drink water. And so some patterns that we have subscribed to and allowed ourselves, whether it be thoughts, whether it be feelings, whether it be actions, have been hardwired. And for us to be able to effectively change our shape, we need to intentionally begin to create a new pathway. It's like if I have to drive home from work every day and I use a particular road, it becomes easy. You can be on call, on conversation with someone without consciously willing yourself to remember, I'm turning left here or right here. You've gotten so used to that road and you just navigate it naturally. And maybe you wake up one day, if you live in Lagos or somewhere, that they are working on this bridge and all of that. And so you have to now take a new route that you're not familiar with. The first few times you take that route, you have to intentionally pay attention. Is it this point where you're turning left or right and all? But over time, eventually, that pathway also then becomes normal. And that's what you're trying to do with writing your shape. You're trying to rewire the pattern that your brain has gotten used to. Is someone getting what we're saying? So it shows the power of intentional repetition and replacement patterns. Intentional repetition, because if you're going to rewire your current pattern, you have to intentionally set a system for repetition. And the more you then begin to use this new pathway, because the old pathway is no longer being used regularly, it gradually dies down. Like a path in a field that has been trodden by so many people is now normal ground. If you now leave it over the years and begin to use another path, gradually grasses begin to grow and that path closes up. And that's what you're trying to do, to intentionally will yourself out of the patterns that sabotage you into patterns that empower you. And that brings me to what we are going to use to conclude today's session. I don't know if I should say sadly, because there's a lot of things I wanted to share, but for the sake of time, I don't want to keep us longer. And this is very important for you to remember. You can take a screenshot of this. If I'm reminded, maybe before the end of this week, I should be able to send the updated slide. This part were not in the slide I sent to Taiwo last week. Now, why did I bring this habit loop? You're trying to rewire new habits. For you to understand how to rewire new habits, you need to understand how habits are formed. And this is a framework by James Clear. If you've not read the book Atomic Habits, please do yourself a very big favor. Get that book and read Atomic Habits by James Clear. The principle is that every habit we form, consciously or unconsciously, goes through the 4 phases of cue, craving, response, and reward. Sometimes the reward is even unconscious, you don't realize. But every habit you subscribe to and gotten used to, you've remained there because at some level, there is a reward that you get from it. Sometimes the reward is avoidance of uncomfortable situations, avoidance of discomfort. Sometimes that's a reward. But here's the thing. Something always cues the desire for that response, for that habit. Something always cues the desire. And for you, in the context of the shape, sometimes the cue to that pattern is the avoidance of those negative, whether it be negative self-talk and all of that. For example, you see an opportunity and fear kicks in. What should be an opportunity? The fixed mindset you have there becomes a cue that tells you, you may be embarrassed here. Or there's an opportunity for you to express your vision to people, your idea to people. But fear kicks in that, what if they think I'm stupid? And you run to the pattern of shrinking back. Yeah, I don't have anything to say. No, it's okay, I'm cool. And the reward you get in that moment is, in your mind, you avoided embarrassment. You avoided looking stupid. So why this is important for us to understand is, if I'm going to reshape my outcomes and write my story, I need to set the new outcome in my mind as a reward, so that I can interrupt myself when that cue comes. When an opportunity comes that I always interpreted as a challenge, an insurmountable mountain, when that cue comes, I want to be able to interrupt it and give myself a new cue by telling myself a new story, reminding myself a new story that can then set me on the path to get me to that outcome as my reward. So that somewhere in between this new story and the outcome I'm seeking, the response I would give because of the new story that I've cued would be the new patterns, the new habits, the new assumptions that I'm letting myself embrace as a constant reminder to draw me closer to the reward. That's basically what this is going to be. And it's going to be more difficult for some of us and much easier for some other people, depending on the strength of your saboteur, depending on the strength of those stories in your mind, those beliefs, those sabotage patterns, depending on the strength of them. But intentionality is important. So one thing you can do with that is to start with one simple pattern you're going to replace. You can take a screenshot of this. For the sake of time, I wanted us to do this in class, but for the sake of time, what I want you to do at the end of this session, again, there's a lot of things I'm giving you at the end of the session. If you come into any of my sessions, you know my sessions set you on fire to then go and do. For a very long time, I don't do sessions where you just come and teach and people are excited. It was such a wonderful session and all. Okay, so what has changed? What are you doing differently? You can't say anything, right? So take a screenshot of this. For those of us who do it, I want to believe all of us will make time to do this. Your life is the most important project you will undertake in this life, right? So take a screenshot of this. Just choose one of those patterns that you've identified that has been sabotaging you. Ask yourself what triggers that pattern for you. And like I said, sometimes the trigger could be the circumstances or the opportunities or the situations that show up, that you find that because this situation show up, I go into this sabotage pattern. And then ask yourself, based on the new story that you've written in the new shape profile that you created, leading you to your new outcome, what can I begin to replace this unhelpful pattern with? What will be my new cue? Now, expo, your new cue here would very easily be the new story you're telling yourself. So that when that situation comes up, instead of you telling yourself, I'm not worthy of this opportunity, you remind yourself to interrupt that thought and replace it with the new story you're telling yourself. This ties very easily to the scripture that says that will bring to subjection every thought that so highly exalts itself above the knowledge of God, will bring them to obedience to the knowledge of Christ. In the same way, every thought that disempowers you from living the fullness of your expression, you interrupt it and bring it under subjection to the new story that empowers you towards that. It's the same principle. The same principle. That there's a story that has been funding this old pattern, but now I want to embrace a new pattern. So that old cue, that old story that sends me into this pattern, I'm choosing to replace it with a new cue, a new story. It's like a new commandment I give you, my heart. A new commandment I give you, my mind. I instruct you anew with new stories and new visions. Right? And building on that, you ask yourself, what reward will keep you motivated? Another story. The reward that can keep you motivated here is the new outcome you're seeking. Remind yourself that this is where I'm going. This is what I want to get. I'm not going to let the old patterns sabotage me. Again, this is not just motivation talk. This will require you to more intentionally actually effect this new belief and action. Like I said, for some of us, it might be easier. For some of us, it might be more difficult. But here is the thing. Even when you realize that you've defaulted, in other words, you've responded to that cue based on your old pattern and your old story, don't beat yourself. Call yourself back to order and show up again. What is going to happen is that because of the new consciousness you are carrying, because of the new consciousness and the new story you're telling yourself, you're reminding yourself constantly, it is going to become easier for you to interrupt those old cues and those old patterns. Which is where, when we talk about affirmations, where it begins to come in. Because listen, you are telling yourself a new story. And what happens is because of the neural pathway that is still strong in your mind regarding the old story, it's still a very busy highway and you're trying to create a new road. You will need constant reinforcements to that new road so that the strength of that old road will not continue to prevail. That's simply what we are trying to do with pattern rewiring. The empowerment anchors are simple affirmations that you remind yourself. When this comes up, you remind yourself again. You remind yourself again the new story you're telling yourself that this is who I am. I am capable of this. Possibilities like this can come out of my life. These negative patterns end with me. This ends with me. I have the capacity to grow, to learn today as I go out. Favor finds me, and it's not because I'm just affirming it, because I'm conscious and ready for it. I am open to the right collaborations. People who seek what I carry will find me, and when they come, I will show up with boldness and courage. Today, I will live with intentionality. I will live with intentionality. I'll build myself in this area. I'll build myself in that area. I'll grow in this area. I carry light and I'll shine for that light. I carry value and I would express that value without fear. I'm a city set on a hill that cannot be hidden. All right? So this is how you approach affirmations. You don't approach affirmations in a vacuum. I am this, I am that. And for some of us, it has no emotional connection. Because now you've written a new story. That new story is guiding what you're saying about yourself. because your affirmations are a reminder of the new story that you're writing and the new outcome that you're working towards. Is this making sense to anybody? Right? So the affirmations don't exist in a vacuum. It's born of an understanding of a new story. Right? See, I wish I had the time to give us some historical context to some of the things we read in scripture and we think they are light things. Because when Jesus Christ was speaking to the Israelites in the Sermon on the Mount, Matthew 5, where he said, you are a city set on a hill that cannot be hidden. They were under Roman rule. They were under Roman rule. They were colonies under Rome, paying tax to Rome and also, as it had to do with impact and value in the world at large, they didn't see themselves as that important. They had a different story in their mind about themselves. So when he told them, that's why he said, you are a city set on a hill. He now reinforced it by saying, listen, people do not light a candle and put it under a bushel. Instead, they set it on top of the table so that it lights up the whole world. So what Jesus Christ was basically saying to them was that, see, I have set my light in you so that you will rise and shine because I have set you upon a hill. He was trying to create a new picture in their mind that can help them embrace this new. Why do you think I should? Yeah. Okay. I'm trying to avoid switching this to what seems like a sermon, but just to wrap up with this, I last week I asked us, and I think all of us are Christians, so I want to assume nobody will be offended with these examples I'm giving. If you read the scripture, read Bible, go and read where Jesus Christ was responding to, where he said, you cannot pour new wine into old wineskin. Go and read the question that led to that. Go and read that. I'm not going to give you. Go and read that. You will see that he was trying to address the mindset that what I'm trying to bring in, you people can't understand it because you're struggling with an old story. Struggling with an old story. So the new patterns, the new outcomes that what I have come with is supposed to birth will struggle to be actualized until the stories in your minds are rewritten. That's why embracing the life of Christ brings new identity because it gives you a new story. You've seen yourself as unworthy. You've seen yourself as broken. You've seen yourself as all of that. And he's saying, I'm writing a new story through you. Because until your heart receives that new story, you will not fully embrace the outcomes of that new life. And that is what affirmation helps you to do, to remind yourself that old new story, so that it begins to replace the highway of the old story. Does that make sense to you? And then it becomes easy. I used to, 5-6 years ago, when I could just teach vision board, how to do vision board. Now, when people come to, whether it be coaching, I want to teach on vision, I first lay foundations. I spent 2 or 3 sessions at the beginning of this year in the Man Academy, teaching them systematically on vision, that from the context and angle of vision of yourself as a seed that has a possibility to blossom into a tree. Let's deal with that aspect first. Vision that is anchored on identity. And then we can transition into vision for what you can do. And then it makes sense for you to now create a vision board. Or else it just become a mechanical exercise again. Oh, cut out this one, do this. What does this represent for you? That would mean nothing to you until the foundations that give weight to that symbolism are laid, until the foundations that makes this new picture mean something to you are laid. It will mean nothing. You go and do that and drop it in one corner of your house and it will not have any impact on you. So the new stories, the new patterns, the new assumptions, the new possibilities you see become so exciting. That's why we get to E. They stir up an excitement, an anticipation, a stirring, a groaning for this new outcome, this new possibility that drives you into, attacking the new your set situations and all of that with this new shape. It stirs up an excitement, a stirring. Does that make sense? So before we get to this place, remember, do your new shape profile and based on that new shape profile, go to the story section of your new shape profile. What are the new stories you want to tell yourself? Create affirmations around them. Create affirmations around them and take it seriously. Take it seriously. Create affirmations around them. Take it seriously. And that would help you to begin to create these new pathways. As I close, my time is, whew. Nick, I'm so sorry. I'm struggling so much to try and wrap up now, but I'm wrapping up in the next 2 minutes, I promise. As I close,
you don't need to apologize. Would have made this. We're thinking of your time and the investment. If not, would have made this a three session. But it's fine. It's okay. They can't have everything. They have to go back and do the work. Yeah. Thank you so much.
All right, sir. So 2 things as I wrap up is you are in this community currently, make the most of it. I said earlier, there's an attitude and an approach with which you join this kind of communities. Leverage it, maximize it. One of the things that community does for you is it fosters alignment and helps sustain your momentum in line with that goal. Very important. If you are in a community of people who are intentionally building themselves, it gives you motivation to also keep on building yourself, right? So community power is important. Whatever goal it is you want to achieve, a community can be you and a group of 3 or 4 persons. It can be large like this, but immerse yourself in environments that stir up a longing for the direction that you're going to. That immersion is very important. And secondly, and this is where the work is, practice this new pattern that you've listed in your new shape for at least 7 days to begin to create new neural pathways. What I mean is make an intention that for the next 7 days, or for the next 14 days, or for the next 21 days, I am going to intentionally practice this new pattern. So if the old pattern was negative self-talk towards yourself, the new pattern is what that I'm going to constantly reaffirm and remind myself who I am, the possibilities that I hold, and the things that I can do. And I'm going to do that repeatedly for the next 7 or 14 days because I am intentionally choosing to create new neural pathways in my mind that leans more to my growth mindset, leans more to my new stories than to the old disempowering stories. Is that okay? All right. So with that, I think I'll just close. I'll close at this point. There are a lot of things I left out there. I would give Nick details of this so he can share with you guys if it's okay with the community. And I'll end with asking you, what new stories are you telling about yourself, about your growth, right? I'll drop the mic here and wait for any questions or feedback.
I have questions myself, sir.
Okay,
Okay.
go on, please.
All right. So, how do one deal with the overwhelming feeling of achieving set goals? Because most of the times when we set goals, we give ourselves the whole motivation and everything. But when we actually sit down, we see these goals are very overwhelming. And how do I start? Where do I begin? Just feels too much to do. A lot of things to have in mind, a lot of things to put in place, a lot of things to be conscious about. So how do we deal with that feeling?
Okay, so thank you for the question. There are 3 or 4 things I can think of that we can look at fundamentally regarding that. Number 1 is that it's very wonderful to dream big and have very scary and frightening goals and vision. Very wonderful. But it's also equally wonderful to be able to break them down. And what I mean is that sometimes what overwhelms us is the enormity of the end product or the big picture. And sometimes the way our minds process that end product, we are processing the entire process as if that end product has to happen today or this week or this month. There are visions and goals that you will get that would outlive you. There are visions and goals that you will get that would need years. And sometimes you can easily get overwhelmed when you are trying to especially if you're a very visionary person, you can easily conceptualize what the end is going to be. Like, let me use Nick Hub, for example. If in the mind of Nick, this would eventually blossom into an international foundation or an organization where thousands, tens and thousands of people at a time would be mentored and equipped, right? It would be easy for him to get overwhelmed if in his mind in executing he's trying to make that happen in 1 month. So it's calls for you to then understand the scale of the vision and what time frame could this end product fit into, and then scale it back to, okay, if this is where we are going, how can we scale it back to this? And it's one of the things I do with the people in Manifest Tribe, the community I set up for support and accountability of goals. Is at the beginning of this year, we did an annual a workshop where we had an annual resets your goals for the year, but we didn't stop there. We then broke it down to your quarterly based on that annual goal. So we started with a vision. What's your vision for the next 3 to 5 years? Where do you do? What are things you're trying to work towards for the next 3 to 5 years? Break it down to annual goal. And then from annual goal, break it down to quarterly quests. And this is why it's important. A lot of goals and visions, whatever you want to call them, die down after the initial motivation. January, when people say this year fit and all of that, January first 2 weeks, people will register to the gym, work out and all of that, and the motivation dies down because one, there's no clarity about the end goal. Two, where there's clarity, you set the bar too far. Oh, it's an annual goal. That annual goal, as wonderful as it is, what does it translate to for the first 3 months? So based on this, what would I need to do in the first 3 months, second 3 months, third 3 months, and the final 3 months to ensure that at the end of the year, I've gotten to that goal? And even when I get it down to that first 3 months, how do I also distill that into habits, daily habits? Let me give you an example. There's a framework I learned from someone called the GPS framework in setting goals, right? If I have a goal that I want to achieve in the next 3 months, that's the overarching goal. I'll ask myself, based on this goal, what are the processes or habits that I need to build or develop to ensure that on a daily basis or on a consistent basis, I'm still working towards that goal that I want to achieve in the next 3 months. And then the S stands for one thing that is very important. I wrote an article today on that: systems. People underestimate the power of systems. So this is this thing I want to do. What systems should I set in place to ensure that I am continuing on this habit and process? I'll give us an example. Last week, I installed an app on my phone called Minimalist Phone. Some of us may have seen the advert. I wanted to test that on my phone because of something. For a very long time, I've been challenging myself to find ways to reduce more and more my screen time. So when I saw the advert on this thing, I saw some of the features, I said, okay, this is good. One of the features on that app is that for some of the apps, I realize I have the tendency to sometimes subconsciously spend more time than I want to on them. I set a timed reminder on it. So for example, platform like Instagram, if I open my Instagram now, the moment I click on Instagram, the app would first show an interface. How much time do you want to spend on this app now? Not how much time for the entire day. How much time do you want to spend now? And when I select that time, and the highest amount I preset on that is 15 minutes. So if I select 15 minutes, at the end of the 15 minutes, the app shows me a pop-up, your time is done here, and you see a button, take me out of here. You click on it, it takes you out of Instagram or whatever it is. That's a system to combat my willpower, so that on the days when my willpower is weak, to remember that I need to be mindful about my use of this thing. This system reminds me, Oga, we agreed. This is, do you understand? So it's a case of the overwhelm can come from one, not having a system. One, okay, let me start with this. One, clarity, not being clear about how to go about the goals. Two, when you're clear, not breaking it down, right? And number three, not having a system that helps you continue on that goal perpetually. So those are three broad things that we can talk about relating to that. I don't know if that answers the question you were asking.
Yes, it does. Thank you very much.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
All right. There's a question in the chat box.
Okay. I see from something from Moses, right? How does this simply mean that when we tend to switch or drift, meaning with those disempowering thoughts from negative people and things, we begin to shift? I'm trying to understand the question. When we tend to switch drifts or meaning with those disempowering thoughts from negative people and things, we begin to shift drifts or movement towards our goal, closing those.
That mute you.
Yes, but I think I'm unmuted now.
Okay.
Moses, can you clarify this question a bit for me? I'm trying to understand it. I see his hand is raised.
All right. Good evening, Sir Chimezie, and our host, Nicholas. Please, thank you so much once again for this session. My question is related to what you said earlier about how you wanted to begin a program on that you're trying to host a meeting or so, kind of a conference. So you had people that you had people in mind you told, which it was discouraging for you. So I had to like kind of relate it to what I said here, that does it simply mean that we tend to switch? That's meaning, because maybe you had a meaning towards maybe not making excuses or so, or the people that you said Africans were not given the opportunity to host. I don't know. That's what I don't know if I'm correct.
Yes.
So you had that was like a form of a meaning you give to yourself about those disempowering thoughts, and you got a negative response, which was from people around you, until you had to meet a particular person that helped you make that move, that shift, and towards your goal, and eventually, consistently, you began to host several conferences in that particular area. So I'm asking, my question is, and also contribution, because I had to make that contribution. That was when you and Sanik was trying to relate something together. So I'm asking also, does it mean that this is a pre-existing shape? Because for me, as my belief is based on discipline, consistency, lack of discipline, inconsistency. So I wanted to ask, how can I be able to manage that kind of mindset?
Okay.
I think mindset. Yeah.
I think I understand the question.
Yeah.
Okay,
so how can I manage
the question better?
All right, sir. Thank
you.
All
right.
Sir.
So first off, I want to draw your attention back to when I said that we can have a growth mindset in one area and have a fixed mindset in another area. Remember that? Now, with the example we gave, and thank God you asked this question, one of the things that can also affect our the disposition of our mindsets is also relative comfortability in an environment. If I go into a new environment, I'm more vulnerable to the stories that people in that environment are already saying about that environment and my kind of person in that environment. Let me clarify. The example that Nick gave, because of where he is. If Nick was in Nigeria, he wouldn't be telling himself, someone like him, this kind of project, the Black. Do you understand? There are stories there are agreements that people make in a certain place that becomes a collective consciousness that we can easily buy into until we interrupt ourselves with that. That was what happened with me also. Because I was new to this place, they're saying it was, and truly, up until we organized that, all the conferences that we organized have been by white persons in School of Applied Sciences. So the facts were that only whites have been organizing. But then the collective consciousness made me buy into the assumption that it means that it will be difficult or impossible for a Black person to buy into that, until I sat down and rewrote the story. I told myself, which one be all this? Because I saw a lot of things I felt we needed to address. I gave myself the permission. I said, she be head of the club is my lecturer that knows me. So let me go and meet him first. Let's talk. Let's see how this thing happens. I gave myself the permission. So yes, the question you're asking, until we give ourselves the permission to write the story, to be difficult for us to see the possibilities. But we also have to pay attention to the context of time and place and our goals, as it were. Sometimes you are so confident, you feel so powerful. For example, let me use an example with myself again. I can come into here and teach with such ease and all, even though I've never met you guys before and all. If, for example, I was called to come and deliver a speech to United Nations, to world leaders, let me use world leaders, G20 summits, they call me out of the blues to come and deliver a speech to world leaders as G20 summit. As confident as I am, there is a difference, as it were, in the way I would approach the preparation. And I'll be honest with you, there'll be a part of me that will be asking myself, is this the kind of way I should be speaking to these people? Is there something I need to know about this? There's something fundamental about, or there's something fundamentally different about the way I approach it, because there are certain stories that my mind will still be trying to adjust to. I don't know if you understand what I'm trying to. So I'm not trying to peddle something that will give you an unreal. So that is the story. That is the truth, that as confident as we are in certain areas, there are new experiences and challenges that will come that we need to remind ourselves, what stories am I telling myself right now in this? I was a very confident young man before I got married, right? I was very confident. There was no, the example I want to give, so let me give caveats and consider, you don't assume that I was this kind of person. Also, I could talk to any lady. If I saw a lady and I like the lady and she fits into the kind of friendship, I could talk to any lady. When it came time to officially let my wife know I wanted her to be my wife, I put some thought into it. And part of the stories I was telling myself was, guy, this is marriage you're trying to ask. Oh, be careful, be sure. I prayed about it, got confirmation, and all of that. What I'm saying is, if something is new to you, there's a tendency that the current evaluation you have of yourself can sometimes present stories that could begin to limit you, because the old is comfortable with the status quo. So sometimes the stories we need to retell ourselves, the new stories we need to tell ourselves, would have to displace the current stories we are telling ourselves. If I feel confident as the owner of a $1 million company, and there's an opportunity to strike a deal that will make my company into a $1 billion company, there's a part of me that will begin to access how to run a $1 billion company. Do I have the competence and capacity for it yet? Those are stories that can come up. And it's important that we'll constantly evaluate those stories as they come up, as those new experiences come up. Does that make sense? So you said you're asking based on your pre-existing shape that is hinged on discipline and consistency as a belief. That's beautiful. So for example, using that as an example, imagine that you have to get immersed in a work environment or an industry where your current definition or context of discipline is shaking. Your current context of consistency is shaking. I used to pride myself as somebody who can read one book every week, so that at the end of the year, I could be able to have finished 50 to 52 books, until the context of work and my responsibility changed. And that became difficult. And do you know what happened? Part of the story I told myself was that I had become unserious with reading. Because for a period of time, I attached a part of my identity to that. I read a lot of books and all. And so when that change happened, I started being afraid to tell people that I read books. Because my idea of being a serious person that read books was reading one book a week. But I have now come into a context where I was reading 12 books a year. I'll just take a book for a month. Because I wanted to get value from the book, I was so busy. I didn't want to rush just for the sake of reading. And the context of that changed. I had to write the story in my head about what it means to be someone that reads, to be a reader. And what that helped me then to do was, because for me, it was now about defining or redesigning consistency for me. I started looking for alternative ways to help me read. So for example, right now, as much as I read physical books, I have Audible that I used to read. I also subscribe to an app called Headway. Headway app gives you a summary of the key points of any book you want to read whatsoever. So sometimes I first read the summaries of the book on my Headway app before I even get a chance to read the full book, because on the app, it also distills the key points from the book that you can learn. Because for me, what is important is that I'm constantly and consistently feeding myself with growth and learning on an ongoing basis. So the fact that I allowed myself to redefine the context of my definition made it easier for me to then find possibilities also. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
You're welcome, sir.
I think I'll pick up from here. Our time is fast spent. And if anybody wants to ask question, they should ask on the group, then we'll forward it to you. Thank you so
All
much
right,
once
sir.
again. Yeah, thank you so much once again for doing this. Thank you. We cannot say thank you enough. We are so grateful. We've been blessed. And guys, this is just the beginning. We are just kickstarting. And I don't need to sell anything to you right now. The truth is, I know that we have 96 persons that were enrolled into this program, and I'm very sure that 96 of you will not finish this program. And even those people that are going to finish this program, the next 20 years, we are not all going to be the same. The difference will not be that the people who are better off have two wings. The difference will be how much of what you have had you have put to work. That's going to make the most difference. It's not by who shouted my life has changed and the rest. No, it's the work you're going to put into what has been taught. That's going to be what will change your life. And let me tell you something, there is no quick fix to life. When it comes to your life, there is no quick fix. There is no quick fix. Even first aid. First aid is not meant to solve the problem. First aid is meant to manage the problem. So if you're really going to make your life meaningful, you need to put in the work. In fact, I used to tell people that if it's too easy, you are most likely not getting the value that you ought to get. So it's not going to be easy. All these things we are saying is more easier said than done. But the truth is, people have done it and they've seen result, and you can't. So that's the most important thing, and that's the framework we want to build. When we're starting, when we're trying to discuss the capstone project, somebody, I can't remember who was that. He was complaining that he's serving in the north, and because of that he may not be able to do the capstone project. And one thing I made you understand is, you've not even started the program yet. You know the reasons, you know what you can or cannot do. And I mentioned the fix and the growth mindset. And God, when I see you hinting on that this evening, I say, oh my God, you have just finished everything. So guys, I know that if that person is here, you should be able to know that you can do that project from what you have seen tonight. It's about how you see, how you face challenges. It's about how you frame it. So thank you so much for having you joining tonight, and we will not be small. And once again, if you can just put in into the text or however you want to do it, just your appreciation. Thank you to Shimana, like thank you for everything. And then with that, we'll close for tonight. Then we'll meet in the group. Thank you, guys. So I'm expecting your text, or you can unmute and say what you
Thank
want
you
to
so
say
much,
now.
sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
So it seems I will get to get born again.
That's the best thing that will happen to your life, my brother.
Yes, please, by all means.